Welcome, everybody. Thank you all for coming out tonight. Looking to have a very informative discussion and a lot of informative information from people who really understand the industry and what data centers are about. But before I get started, let me introduce myself. My name is Rich Fitzgerald. I'm the Executive Director of the Southwestern Pennsylvania Commission. That is the 10-county Southwestern Pennsylvania infrastructure, transportation, economic development, and workforce development federally designated organization, made up mostly of the county commissioners who form the commission and vote on the amount of roads and bridges and projects that you see throughout our homes here in southwestern Pennsylvania. I want to really thank the Fayette County Economic Development Coalition for putting this event together. The coalition is made up of Fayette County Economic Development Office, Redevelopment Authority of the County of Fayette, the Fayette County Chamber of Commerce, and Fay-Penn Economic Development Council. This is the 5th town hall meeting that they have organized. I also want to thank Penn State for their hospitality and allowing us to use the Eberly campus for this town hall meeting. We'll be taking questions in a minute, but first we're going to have a presentation by Brian Kennedy, the Executive Vice President of the Pittsburgh Tech Council. Brian, take it away.
That's a terrible photo of me. I am, as Rich said, I'm Brian Kennedy, and I'm the Vice President of Government Affairs and Operations for an organization called the Pittsburgh Technology Council, and I'm honored to be here and to have been invited down here tonight. I do want to tell you a little bit about who I am and who I represent, and also disclose any kind of agenda I might have tonight. The Pittsburgh Technology Council was founded in 1983 to help to revitalize the region's economy, right, to diversify our manufacturing base to include innovation companies. We have about 1,000 companies that are in the manufacturing, robotics, healthcare, biosciences, and we represent nearly a third of the region's payroll right now. Personally, I'm from Beaver County. I came to work for the Pittsburgh Technology Council with the goal of having jobs in places like Beaver County and revitalizing places like that. I'm really excited you're going to hear tonight. So first, I am a little bit nervous, so I am going to ask you to be easy on me tonight. But I am really excited to share some data with you. I do want to let you know I do represent data centers, so I have some data centers in our membership that most of you wouldn't have heard of, who've been operating in the region for decades, and you haven't heard anything about them. I do represent some big tech companies like Google and Amazon. None of them are asking me to be here to talk about this topic. But why I'm here tonight is actually to talk to you mostly about manufacturing. That's what I think is the story to be told tonight. So if I have any opinion that I'm going to share tonight, it's going to be an opinion about manufacturing and how data centers help us get there. So I'm going to try to use this to share. Let's see. Ooh, this works. Okay, so we hosted something called the Pennsylvania Data Center and Energy Innovation Summit about a month and a half ago. And for those of you who have been told there are no jobs in data centers, you definitely were not there at that event, because that was a nearly 700-person event, and it could have been much larger. We had to turn crazy numbers of people away. I'm going to tell you why we think data centers are really great for Western PA. It has a little less to do with the data center than you might think. Well, let's see. Oh, sorry. Okay, that's great. Okay. Let's go. So we hired a group called Mangum Economics to do an economic impact survey of data centers in Pennsylvania. Not the boring kind, right? Not the kind that just looks at the data centers and tells you 30,000 people are going to build them and 30,000 people are going to operate them. But if you look at most of those studies, they'll show you how many direct jobs are going to be created by a data center and in a data center. And then they tell you about these things they call indirect jobs. Have you guys heard that before, indirect jobs? And the indirect jobs are actually what we decided we wanted to study in this proposal, because we theorize, because a lot of people will say, you know, energy or manufacturing are indirect jobs of data centers. We actually, in Pennsylvania, believe that data centers are indirect jobs of our energy community. And I'm going to prove that to you here tonight. So let's talk about where we are. I chuckle when I hear people say, let's do a moratorium on AI data centers in Pennsylvania. Because as this slide shows you, we ain't got any, right? There are no hyperscale data centers between here and you know, as far as I can drive without having to charge my car. Right now, we have about 182 megawatts of data center capacity. That's how they roughly describe a data center. based on how much megawatt capacity it has. Pennsylvania has 182. To put that in perspective, Ohio has 3,000. Northern Virginia has 13,000. So 182, we are not on anyone's radar map. But that's going to change really quickly. And what we've heard is that Pennsylvania is now the 4th largest state in America for announced data center projects. The 4th largest behind Virginia, Texas, and Georgia, projecting to have about 7,000 megawatts of data center capacity within the next 10 years. Interestingly, that's almost the amount of power that we have decommissioned in Pennsylvania over the last 5 years. So we have decommissioned power that could have powered all those data centers without having to do anything extra for the power grid. Almost. Okay, so now let's talk about, I'm going to go over tonight the 3 ways that you can create jobs from data centers. And this is the one everybody talks about. And you're going to see all kind of different numbers. I don't know if my numbers are correct or not. You'll hear other people's. But let's just go over where we are now. We have almost, the green bars show how many people work in data centers in Pennsylvania. I'm going to quantify that first column on the left as almost none, because we have almost no data centers in Pennsylvania today. But right now, immediately to build data centers, we have to hire 8,000 people today. So we project next year there'll be 8,000 construction workers building just the data centers, not building the power facilities, not building the other facilities I'm going to tell you about that are more exciting, but 8,000 consistent construction jobs across the 10-year period. So when people say, oh, what are you going to do after you build this data center? We're going to build another data center. So about 8,000 jobs. And then something happens interestingly. The jobs inside the data center tack up. They go from almost nothing today to about 8,000 jobs over the 10-year period. And then I'm going to tell you about even more. We'll talk about those indirect jobs. So let's talk about power. Why Pennsylvania is attracted to the data center. And one of them is because we have an abundance of power in Pennsylvania. In fact, we export about $5 billion worth of electricity to other states in the PJM power grid alone. And that's despite that 5,000 megawatts of decommissioned power that I told you about. About a third of every electron we produce in Pennsylvania leaves the state of Pennsylvania. Now, I don't know. I mean, I do like the $5 billion, but personally, I'd rather see that energy staying in Pennsylvania doing something productive like creating manufacturing jobs here. So it is a great export industry, but that is a key reason why people are coming here. Now, one of the reasons I was a little nervous about talking tonight is because a lot of the facts aren't on my side, right? And you guys know that, right? So I think probably most people in the room know that data centers are going to cause your electricity prices to skyrocket. They are. Anybody here disagree? Okay, you guys can't talk. Seriously, right? We know this. It's a fact. It's undisputed that data centers are going to cause your electricity to skyrocket. Your water bills are going to go up. You know how much water these things use? Anybody here disagree with that? You do. Okay, guys, stop, stop. AI is coming for your job. AI is going to come for people's jobs here in Fayette County. We know that. These are undisputed facts. And the last undisputed fact is AI data centers don't create jobs. Here's the thing. Everything I just said is false. It's completely false. And by the end of this, you're gonna at least understand that I'm not making that up, and you can look this stuff up yourself. So let's go to the reliability. So this is the second reason why people come here. We have a very high mix of nuclear power and natural gas, which are very reliable. Here in the data center industry, the last thing you want is your power being disrupted. So that also makes Pennsylvania really attractive. Now we're getting to the good stuff. Okay? So I wish I don't have these things labeled, but if I asked you all, if you knew that Northern Virginia had 13,000 megawatts of data center capacity and that data centers make your electricity bills skyrocket, you would have to acknowledge that they have the highest electricity price in the PJM grid, right? They should be over there where it says DC and JJ and MI and MD, and like, they're not though, right? In fact, Virginia has the lowest electricity prices in the PJM power grid, and they are the data center capital of the world. And everyone in this room, minus these 4 people, disagreed with that statement when I made it. Pennsylvania's electricity rate is about 30 to 40% higher than Virginia's. Now let's think about that. As a place that manufactures things still, that buys a lot of energy in manufacturing, can you imagine the stimulative impact it would have if we could lower our energy prices in Pennsylvania by 30 to 40%? And how is it possible that data centers absolutely raise your electric bill when the places with the highest concentration of data centers, Ohio and Virginia, are below us, and you see us, we have almost no data centers, 182 megawatts to their 14,000, right? So this is the kind of information I want to share with you tonight. There are a lot of statements that have been developed by activist groups in other parts of the country that they've tried to import here to Pennsylvania, and they don't apply. Pennsylvania's different. I'm going to show you some more reasons why. This is the big one. This is the super big one. Pennsylvania is where George Westinghouse invented the power grid. The empire of lights rose from the fields of Western PA. Every single part of the grid, whether we're talking about generation, whether we're talking about transmission, whether we're talking about the steel, it's all here. And while that Westinghouse name isn't out there like it used to be, the companies are still here. And I'm going to show you some things, and it's part of my key recommendation to you. But what you can see here is that we are developing about $12 billion of manufactured items that are for data centers, and another, where's my raw materials, another $2 billion. So about $15 billion worth of exports just to the PJM power grid. Think Virginia, right? Just to the PJM power grid. Let's put that in perspective. Virginia, they buy our electricity. Virginia buys our manufactured goods. You know what their exports are? 1.9 billion. So 15 billion for us, 1.9 billion for Virginia. So you're starting to see this argument shaping up here. Data centers may not create jobs in a place like Virginia, but they sure do in a place like Pennsylvania. Talk about what they buy, and then I'm going to show you where they're doing it. Data centers need things like transformers. Do you know we manufacture transformers about 15 miles up the road from here at a company called Hitachi? Anybody here work at Hitachi? Have family members work at Hitachi? Hitachi Energy just dropped $70 million into their facilities just up the road in Westmoreland County. Actually, I think they're on 119 if I remember. We make transformers. We make grid-scale batteries. EOS Energy, which is putting $250 million in a new facility in northern Allegheny County. Switchgear. These are these, when you're driving down the interstate and you see these giant transmission towers and you see like honeycomb things, we make these here. Steel. I don't know if anybody here has heard of what's my steel company in Butler County that I can say every other time? Cleveland Cliffs. Thank you. Everybody here at Cleveland Cliffs? They make steel. They tried to buy U.S. Steel. We didn't like that idea. But they make grain-oriented steel, and they are the last manufacturer in this country that makes grain-oriented steel. And why do we care? Because grain-oriented steel is what goes into those transformers made by PA Transformer in Washington County and made by Hitachi Energy in Westmoreland County. That's the only supplier. These companies right here, let me show you them. These companies, so let's talk about Mitsubishi Electric Power Products just invested $86 million in a new factory to build switchgear in Beaver County. Patty, I think you helped on that project. Where's GE Vernova? GE Vernova, they're involved in the Homer City project, just invested $100 million in Charleroi, and then 2 weeks ago they bought a 750,000 square foot manufacturing facility. We have no idea what they're going to do with it. Coherent Corporation just got $2 billion in Butler County from NVIDIA for new photonics that go into data center operations. EOS Energy, I mentioned, I think I said their number was $250 million. It's actually $350 million for a new headquarters and a new manufacturing center in northern Allegheny County. And I mentioned Hitachi Energy. I also have mentioned to you PA Transformer, which is making major improvements to their factory. And I've mentioned Starline the Grand, which has 800 people working full-time building data center components. This is the secret weapon of data centers and job creation in Western PA. This is it. If you want to be for data centers, this is why to be for data centers, right? Anything that generates massive investments into the power grid and modernizing our power grid is great for Western PA. Forget the fact that modernizing our power grid is really good to attract more manufacturers here. We manufacture the power grid. So this is one of my key messages, is that this is a core reason. There are not just thousands of jobs being created in these factories, but people like the iron workers and the carpenters are building these factories right now. Another question, where are you guys going to go when you're not building a data center? Are you going to build a factory to build the power to power the data center? There we go. So these are the three kind of key advantages for Pennsylvania. we are positioned to go from 182 megawatts to 7,000 megawatts. That's going to create 8,000 construction jobs that are going to be here for a generation. That does not count people who build power facilities. It doesn't count people who build manufacturing facilities. It's just the builders building data centers. We're going to power them. We're going to continue. And this is the great thing. And I do want to be super clear about something. I do want to be clear. Our energy bills absolutely will spike because of data centers. Absolutely will spike because of data centers if we stop building power, right? And this is the key thing about Pennsylvania. There have been practically no data centers announced that weren't first announced with power, right? First, Homer City wants to build a power. First, IEP wants to build power. First, the team out in Shippingport wants to build power. If folks who actually are against energy are successful in stopping energy, I promise your prices are going to go up. Your prices have gone up already, and it has nothing to do with data centers. It has to do with the forced retirement of 5,000 megawatts of coal-fired and nuclear-powered, why we did that, I don't know, and nuclear-powered facility. If that happens in Pennsylvania, doesn't matter if you get any construction data centers, your prices are going to go up. So these are the key messages. We do talk about some things that we think counties should do. First thing we think counties should do, look up the top 30 manufacturers of switchgear, turbines, and transformers. Chances are that 75 to 80% of those companies are building a new factory right now or are looking to build a new factory. It could be right here. We have the workforce. We build the power grid. That's number one. Second thing, don't give these people money. Don't give these data centers money. If these guys come to you with their handout saying, we need money to build a data center, tell them to take a hike. The one thing they have going for them is money. Don't pay them to build their data center. They have plenty of money. Third thing, let's find the places in Western PA that have a story of renewal, right? So I work in the largest data center in Pittsburgh. Some of you might know it as Allegheny Center Mall. Does anybody know Allegheny Center Mall? The old planetarium, if you went there when you were a kid. Allegheny Center Mall. It's on the north side. And it was the first failed urban mall, right? It used to have Sears and Kaufman's and Wendy's and all those folks, and it failed. It failed probably 2 decades ago. The reason that we didn't have to come up with government money to tear it down like we're going to have to with Century 3 Mall is because the data center community came in and put their centers in there. And I have to, if you came to visit me tomorrow, I have to convince you there was a data center. You wouldn't believe me because you'd be like, where's the noise we hear about? Where's all the water boiling off the ceilings? So that's the third thing is let's find a reuse. Let's put data centers, not in greenfields, but let's put them in places like generated coal-fired power. Let's put them in brownfield sites. And let's let them use their money to revitalize those sites so that we don't have to. Those are our key points. And then one final warning, when this is the last, I'll leave you with this, one final warning. Be wary of the phantom data center developer. Be wary. And that's what, by the way, that's what we're doing here tonight. Tonight is about a phantom data center developer in Fayette County. And what I mean by that is there isn't one, right? So I'm not aware of any data center company that's looking at Fayette County right now. Certainly none have asked me to help soften up the environment for them. And when you have a phantom data center, they are the most terrifying data center you can possibly imagine. They're the loudest, they use the most water, they're gonna have all kind of traffic, they're gonna kill a salmon, they are gonna do everything bad you can possibly imagine. And the reason they are is because you're imagining, right? Because the data center developer isn't actually here to answer questions. And so one of the things I think you're gonna notice, and track this, when there is an actual data center developer coming into a region, they go through pretty quickly. They go through pretty quickly because they come in, they analyze the ordinances that have been passed, that have been developed, and they comply with them. They talk about what they're gonna do. This one I just met in Beaver County yesterday, taking over a racetrack. It'd be hard to make a noise argument when you're taking over a racetrack, right? They're using a closed water loop system. They're not using water. They are gonna use water, but they only use it once. It's gonna be recycled. It's gonna go from paying $10,000 in property taxes to paying $450,000 in property taxes. That's gonna do a lot for that local community, and it is a good distance away from any. The same thing said for the second Beaver County project, the Align Data Center project. Down where I'm from, I grew up a mile from it in Raccoon Township. It's going into Shippingport. It's 400 yards down the road from our nuclear power plant that was set to be mothballed and everyone fired. Both of my parents' best friends worked at at either the nuclear plant or the coal plant. The coal plant was gone and the nuclear plant was set to be gone. That nuclear plant is now got a second lease on life and has boosted electricity output by 20% because of Vistra, which is selling that excess power to Meta. There are a lot of... Oh, well... Oh, okay. So here's the thing. Hey, so listen, here's the thing. Listen, here's the thing. You can ask your question wherever you want. I'm going to leave because I told you the truth. No one's paid me to come down here. Yeah, okay, you have a good day. Thanks.
Thank you, Brian. Okay. When you came in, you were given a card with a QR code on it, and that's how you can ask your questions. You can also give it to the people who are walking around with clipboards, the registration, and we're going to hear from our experts in a minute. But I also want to thank our county commissioners. A lot of this came about because we wanted to learn, we in this region really wanted to learn about what is the effect of data centers. So we took a trip a couple of months ago to Loudoun County, Virginia, which, as Brian mentioned, is the data center capital of the world. They've got dozens and dozens of data centers, and we learned an awful lot about, how they operate. Some are good, maybe some aren't so good, and how to do it right. So I do want to thank County Commissioner Scott Dunn, County Commissioner Vince Facides, and County Commissioner Harry Dutch Leonard. Vince, by the way, is the chairman of the SPC. I also know we're joined tonight by County Commissioner from Greene County, Betsy McClure, Vice Chair of the SPC. And again, learning a lot about not just data centers, but the impact that they will have upon the community. I also want to thank Mark Rayfield, Planning Director for Fayette County, for helping to put all of this together. I'm going to ask each one of our guests, I'm going to give them a little introduction, but I also am going to ask them maybe to just say a couple of words about how they are involved with the industry, what their background is a little bit. I'm going to start with Sean Steffi. Sean is the business agent of the Boilermakers Local 154. They're located up in Allegheny County. And Business Director Steffi, how many counties do you represent here in Pennsylvania?
So the Boilermakers, we have 24 counties in Pennsylvania, 2 in Ohio, and 2 in West Virginia. And then the other half of the state falls under the Boilermakers Local 13.
And tell us a little bit about your members and,
Sure.
and what this industry is going to do or has done.
So Boilermakers, we're in the building trades unions. So as energy is the heart of the economy, the boiler is the heart of a power plant. That's what we do. We're high pressure tube welders. And to kind of put this into direction, just if you had a brand new truck and it didn't have no engine and no exhaust, it would be worthless, right? So we're like the engine and the exhaust of the power plant. And I'm also the president of South Central Building Trades, which represents the new plant that's being built in Homer City. And I think this is important to say. I'm a lifelong resident of southwestern PA, born and raised in Indiana County. My family lives there, my kids, my grandchildren, so I know what it means. And I'm not here to argue with anybody. I'm just here to convey a message to Fayette County. You can deny having anything built here. You don't have to, that's your right as residents not to build this. But I'm here to tell you that I need blue-collar men and women in all the building trades, and I'm offering careers, not a one-time job, okay? I'm offering you a great blue-collar family-sustaining wage that's not a one-time job, and we're looking, whether you build in Fayette County or not, please call us. I have this. Call anybody in the building trades. We're taking men and women right now that want to get in the trade because there's a high demand for blue-collar, skilled blue-collar men and women. Okay, to go with that, the Homer City project has meant a lot to that town, okay? I've watched the manufacturing leave, I've watched the coal mines leave, and I've watched the coal fire plant leave, okay? I've watched that school district shrink that I've coached football there for over 20 years, okay? I graduated in '85, I had 160 kids in my graduating class. My son graduated in 2013, 56 kids. If you want an economy and you want it to thrive, energy is the heart of it. Data center is just one aspect of it. Whether anybody in this audience likes it or not, everybody wants reliable electricity, and we have an opportunity to build it right here in PA. We sit on the second largest deposit of natural gas in North America, and every one of us in here got a phone, and every one of us is watching Netflix and digital streaming. That's why you're building data centers. There's a lot of good, there's a lot of bad. That's up to you. I'm telling you that we're gonna build this infrastructure somewhere. If you don't wanna build it here, that's fine. We're building it, and I'll take kids out of your Votex, and I'll take your young men and women that wanna apply into the trades. I got other trade unions here that are representing other trade unions. That they're here, and they're also in demand. So I'm not here to argue with you and ask you to deny the data center. I'm pro. I think it's coming whether we like it or not. You can have my phone tomorrow. I'll throw it right in there. I don't want it. I'm not on Facebook. I don't do anything with AI. I could care less. I'll throw it in the water tomorrow, okay? I see you sitting in front. You're all filming. You're on your phone. That's why we're building data centers, okay? It needs electricity. It needs electricity. It needs reliable base load electricity, and that only comes from one thing, okay? That's fossil fuels, gas and coal, and then nuclear, okay? And we're sitting on the mother lode. We have an opportunity. You can take it or not. Fayette County's sitting in a great place. You can watch it get built here, or you can throw a stone across the border into West Virginia and Ohio and watch it get built over there. I'm here. I'm not arguing with you. I'm just telling you. We're taking men and women, and we want the Givians great jobs and great careers.
Whoa. We are going to please allow the members to have their speak. Is there questions? And go from there. Please, we're going to allow the panelists to talk, if you would. Otherwise, we don't have an informational meeting.
Rich, if I could just say one more thing. It's more than just data centers, what I'm speaking here today, okay? So, we just had the winter storm that just hit right here, okay? I didn't see anybody complaining when fossil fuels was keeping your lights on. It was coal, natural gas, and nuclear, okay? That's what kept your lights on. That's guaranteed. You can look up research, and I have it right here. For 4 days during that winter storm, solar produced 0 megawatts, okay? 0. Gas was producing, it was king on the grid. I got it right here. You can't. Well, the data centers are gonna build power, and that power is gonna go back into grid reliability. Okay. That's fine, you don't, I'm just telling you the truth. You can look it up. All right,
we're gonna move on, next, I wanna talk to Corey Young. Corey is the director, the Center for Energy and Built Environment at Washington and Jefferson College, one of our great universities here in southwestern Pennsylvania. Corey, talk about your interest in the energy and what data centers can do.
So, excuse me. Thank you for having me tonight. I'm from Center for Energy and Built Environment at W&J. Our center was formed in 2012 amidst the shale gas boom to provide free and low-cost education and outreach for boroughs and townships when they needed information about energy and energy development. Since then, we've grown and expanded to address a bunch of other issues that borough and township managers need information on, including stormwater management, infrastructure development, and then, of course, with data centers being the hot topic these days, lots and lots with data centers. So we do research on data centers. I'm not paid by any data center developer. I work for W&J and W&J only. And so we merely just provide free education and outreach for your borough managers, county commissioners, other elected officials, school districts, all to get information at no cost. So part of why I was invited here tonight was because we've had so many borough and township managers reach out to say, hey, I really want to know the difference between a co-location facility and a hyperscale facility, and what is an interconnection request? Can you explain that to me so that I'm not getting a whole bunch of garbage from people who either are very pro or very against data centers on either side? And so we're happy to provide that information so that they're not paying an outside consultant, they're not paying an engineer to do that for them. So that's the purpose of our center at W&J. I teach public policy, energy policy classes at W&J, and before that, I was a community planner doing land use planning in North Texas and Southern Oklahoma. So I worked in Dallas-Fort Worth area, and then the Choctaw Nation in southern Oklahoma. So that's why I know a ton about urban planning, land use, zoning, all of that, which obviously helps a lot with guiding township and borough officials when it comes to data center development, because there are certainly lots and lots of questions about planning and zoning and board commissions and all that jazz.
Okay, thank you, Corey. And last but certainly not least, Dan Adamski. He's the Executive Managing Director Brokerage of Jones Lang LaSalle in Pittsburgh. Their offices are in downtown Pittsburgh. JLL is literally one of the leading developers in the country and quite frankly in the world. In all kind of development, not just the industry we're talking about tonight, but office development, industrial development, et cetera. So Dan, I know you've been involved in a number of years in doing these in multiple states. Talk a little bit about your experience and what you've seen when it comes to data centers.
Yeah, thank you everyone for having us here. Thank you, Sean, because my kids make fun of my Yinzer accent. I think you definitely, you got a way better one than I do. But JLL, we're a global commercial real estate services firm. We're actually not developers, we're just consultants. And we advise, companies that are site search wherever they are in the country and across the globe. The other part of my job, which I probably enjoy the most, working with the PRA, Patty Horvitz, groups like that, and trying to attract jobs to Western PA. Frankly, I have 4 kids, and I'd like to see them stay in the area. One thing that really got my attention last year, the Federal Reserve of Cleveland, which looks at 30 markets in our area, for economic indicators. We were dead last in every single category. Cleveland beat us, Cincinnati beat us, everywhere in Ohio. And so, part of our job is trying to bring, other companies here, attract jobs here. Part of that is certainly data centers and all the jobs that Sean was talking about. So we come at it more from a consultant perspective, and our clients, we have clients that are global in nature. Westinghouse is one, for example. And wherever they are in the world, we're there to help them evaluate a site, right? And they don't want to be in a community that doesn't want them. So if you as a community decide data centers aren't right for us, I respect that. Like, they don't want to be where they're not wanted, right? But it should be an educated decision. Like you said, it shouldn't be you shouldn't hear from all one side or the other. Gather all the facts and make up your mind. So I'm just here to answer questions. And if at the end of the day you decide this isn't something you want, well, then you've come to the right conclusion based on the facts that you've gathered. But I'd like to at least provide data points that you might need to make up your mind.
Well, my computer went out, but I know the first question. I'm gonna ask it before it went off on me. How can we be sure, both in data centers and in power generation, that there will be jobs for our young people, and that those jobs will be maintained in the communities in which the data center and/or power plant will be built? Any one of you, I could start. Maybe I'll start with the man in the middle. Go ahead with you, Corey.
Well, thanks for that, Rich. So I'm going to veer from the intro speaker a little bit in that there is a big difference between direct and indirect jobs and how many folks are involved in construction and the process of developing the data center versus those who work there long term. So certainly it's going to have an impact on the front end and provide lots of construction jobs and development of the building itself, all the electricity and components that go into it. Depending on where those components are made, that certainly could also be impactful for Pennsylvania. What we're seeing currently, unless the industry evolves, tremendously over time, the number of folks who work long time in those facilities is not giant. It's not a huge number of folks that work in the facilities long term. So it certainly is fair on the front end and has the potential to be very impactful. It's a big question mark on the long term, what that looks like in terms of those folks who are actually working in the data center itself.
Sean, I'm going to go to you next, because one of your jobs is to keep your members working.
So right now, I'm looking to put 500 Boilermakers on the Homer City project, and that's in the building trades. It'll end up being around 3,500 building trades members. Then will be return maintenance jobs, just like we've done in the past everywhere else. We work nuclear, gas, coal, steel. So we've been around as the Boilermakers and the other trades over 130 years, building this and maintaining this infrastructure. And the job are going to be great. Now, if I could just give you, like, this Homer City job, If they work this schedule for the next 3 to 5 years, my members will be making at 5/9 schedule about $150,000 a year. That's $2,900 a week. And I can't, that's a blue collar, family sustaining job. And all the other trade unions are similar. And I'm here promoting labor and union, and I'm just telling you the power block and the data centers are about 93% built union. And the building trades unions are strong in Western PA and throughout Pennsylvania. And we're just here to say we're going to build it, and we want to be a part of building it. And this is right up our alley, and we're looking forward to taking young men and women and giving them great careers.
Dan, what has been your experience?
I'm not too much on the workforce side, other than we know that we're trying to be, my job is to be competitive with other cities that we compete against, the Austins, the Nashvilles of the world, and try to attract them to Western PA. So I think there's a thing called a flywheel effect, where if you pick any industry, set aside data centers, but if you can get those transformer factories being built here, then they're going to employ other people. So we got to do something different. Again, we're last in every category. We have negative population growth in Western PA for the last 20 years. I do national consulting across the country, help my clients figure out where they want to be. And one of the first things they always look at is population growth, and we continually get eliminated. So it's becoming a self-fulfilling cycle. And I'm a Western PA guy. I like to win. I want to figure out how we keep more of those jobs here at the end of the day.
One of the things that's come up from some people that are concerned about are oftentimes NDAs, non-disclosure agreements that are signed, in various communities. I know Governor Shapiro has put something out called GRID, and one of those things is about, more public disclosure, more transparency. Talk about why that happens, and maybe is that something that the industry should get away from? Let me start with you, Dan.
Yeah, NDAs are pretty common with the data centers. I'm all for transparency. We have a Democrat governor and a Republican Senator McCormick. They're both in favor of the industry and putting requirements in place. But the NDAs, a lot of times, I'm only speaking from a real estate perspective, but you don't want your competitors knowing what you're doing, because it's going to drive the price up. So there could be other reasons why they do it. But when we first get involved, if there's an NDA, it's because they don't want, possibly, Meta doesn't want AWS knowing what they're doing, because it's going to bid the price up. So it's more of an economic issue from when I'm involved.
Corey, what's your sense from the university perspective?
So the NDAs obviously don't promote transparency. If a community decides that a data center is right for them, if a county development agency decides that a data center is right for them, it should be a transparent process with public input where folks have a voice at the table. So I think that's very important. The industry has shown some hesitation to release numbers in some cases when you look both in the United States and abroad on things like water use at times, which has been a touchy subject. And so one of the tools that I think we should promote at the community level is looking at community benefit agreements and understanding what community benefit agreements are. If someone is in favor of a data center coming to their community, understanding how to pass one of those community benefit agreements, which sets rules and regulations and expectations for the data center going forward. So that certainly is an option, even if you're not a proponent of data centers, and you feel like you still don't have a voice to stop it, that could be a way to get involved, is to implement a community benefit agreement, which sets those rules and regulations and expectations.
Sean?
Yeah, I can't stand the NDA agreements. It's secretive, and I totally agree with the crowd here. I think that they should be more transparent with everybody in these communities that they want to come build at. They should be transparent with the trades on what kind of manpower they're looking at and not give us a surprise. And I think it would take a lot of the issues that I'm seeing here tonight, that people don't understand what's coming or what could possibly come to their town. And that's what I'm saying. Anybody should have the opportunity to say that's good for us or not good for us. And I think that if they would be more transparent and tell you on what it's going to bring to your community economically, what it's going to do for, how much water use, the pollution, and everything else, they should be transparent about it. You can have the decision. I totally agree with that. Me personally, I think it needs to be built, And, you know, us in the building trades, we're ready to build it because it means a hell of a lot of work for us.
What will be the impact on our roads, whether the wear and tear of roads or the amount of traffic in a community in which both a power plant and a data center would become? This isn't please submit your question. Please submit your question. I'm reading the questions. I'm reading the questions right off the thing. Do you want to talk about the roads and the impact what traffic and roads have on this?
You know, so again, speaking from a real estate perspective, we have different uses for different things. I mean, we work with trucking facilities, right? And they're going to put a lot of trucks on the road and probably not pay a lot in taxes. So the communities that have approved data centers, one of the reasons they do typically is because they're not putting kids in schools, very many. They're not putting trucks on the road. You know, I live in Washington County in a very, very nice rural area, and I just had a gas well going across the street from me, and it's 24/7 truck traffic, right? So, you know, the data center won't have that. I mean, whatever cons or, you know, everything has pros and cons, but that is certainly one of the benefits of it is in most counties, they're the largest taxpayer once they're established, and they put very few kids in the school and vehicles on the road.
What about the noise levels of data centers? It's something sometimes people bring up. If it's in a community, would that be disturbing the way, I mean, Brian mentioned a racetrack or, you know, something that would be very loud, a loud manufacturing facility. Corey, let me go to you on that one.
So in studying data centers so far, one of the primary noise complaints seems to come from backup diesel generators that are on site. So these are facilities that can't have any downtime. They're expected to run 24/7, be reliable, just be churning in the background consistently. So most facilities have backup generators available to ensure that they can continue operations when the power goes off. So some of the studies that we've looked at from Virginia, for example, from Loudoun County, has been the regular testing of the diesel generators throughout the week at various times. And this isn't just usually one diesel generator, it's multiple that exist on site. So that seems to be the most common complaint. Other complaints are like a low buzz or hum, presumably from the servers operating in the facility themselves. So some folks have studied that sound of the hum or noise sort of always in the background, depending on how close or far away you are. One of the other interesting pieces too, as we consider what some folks at the state level are calling BYOG, or bring your own generation, in order to mitigate impacts to the electric grid, how much electricity they use, there are proponents of bringing your own generation, so having on-site electricity generation right there at the data center. So depending on what type of plant is built to generate that electricity, that also introduces new characteristics about how much sound is generated, what types of smells are generated, what it looks and smells and feels like around that facility throughout the day and throughout the week.
Anybody else want to touch the noise, or we'll go on the?
I would
Go
say
ahead, Dan.
that's what zoning's for, right? I mean, it's your community. You can put in place the rules you want around noise. You know, decide what the decibels should be at the property line. That's very important. If you're considering a data center in your community, that's something you got to factor into your zoning. Decibels, there's limits. I think they want to abide by them, but that's up to each individual community to put your rules in place regarding noise.
We've talked a little bit about power. Let's talk about water. What effect do we think this would have on the local water supply, whether it's a private and or a public authority that's providing the water? Dan, I'll start with you.
Yeah, you know, I'm a lifelong resident of Western PA, and I think the one thing we all have in common is we all bitch about how much rain we have. So I never thought I'd actually have to address the shortage of water. But most of the data centers today, they're trying to do the closed loop, as Brian said. Frankly, if you look at the big five hyperscalers, they're the biggest purchasers of renewable energy of any companies in the world. So, you know, as a rule, they want to be environmentally friendly. And, you know, they got to be held to that. But the water, they're now using closed loop systems. It's kind of like filling up your radiator in your car, and then it's there forever, mostly. So, and the byproduct is steam. So they're not emitting, you know, we're working on a project in Aliquippa right now that used to be a steel mill. And I wouldn't even want to know what that thing was emitting during its heyday, but now if this project goes through, it's going to be, basically the byproduct will be steam. And, it is, again, I said I'm a competitive guy. I want to win for Western PA, so we have to focus on our strengths. One is water. For example, Texas is just kicking our ass right now, frankly, speak bluntly, because they have no zoning, they have flat land and just as much, actually more gas than we have. So what's our competitive advantage compared to them? It's really water and an excess of it. If we decide, we want to be competitive, that's one of our advantages.
Either the other one of you to talk about that issue?
No, I could just say that, if you look at like the Homer City facility, it has its own reservoir. That power plant built it in 1970. It's Tolick Reservoir. Keystone has its own reservoir. Conemaugh, most of these brownfield sites have their own water supply, and it will use nothing more than what it used in the past, and probably less with the natural gas. And as far as the data center goes, I have no idea on its consumption other than what he spoke about on the closed loop part of it, which would act like a car radiator and just keep reusing its water. But I just say that most of the water will probably be consumed on the power generation part of it.
So I'll speak to that really quickly. The closed loop versus open loop system, the closed loop being that you unload the water at the start of the data center's operation, and then it continuously cycles through. The open loop being that you're continuously drawing water to predominantly cool the facility. So that's really like picking your options with how you want to cool, because data centers require a lot of cooling to make them operate. So are you going to use water to keep it cool, or are you going to use HVAC systems and air conditioning to keep it cool? So the closed loop system is tens of thousands, or even in some cases hundreds of thousands of gallons of water unloaded at the start and then continuously operates, presumably from municipal supplies. And as time goes by, that's one area that we are seeing a great deal of evolution in the industry, moving away from those open systems to the closed loop system so that it only requires the onboarding at one time.
I'll give this one to Dan. What would you say the effect of a data center or operation on property values in a community would have?
I guess it depends where you are. They shouldn't go in a neighborhood, that's for damn sure, because that's not what they're made to do. If it's, for example, the one we're working on in Beaver County in Aliquippa, it was a former steel mill, right? So the only impact will be reduction in taxes, ideally. If you look at Loudoun, I can only look at the other areas. Loudoun County, Virginia, as Brian said, the largest data center market in the world. Their taxes have gone down for 10 consecutive years, which is a nice, that's a nice benefit. So I don't know what it necessarily do to your property value in, across the entire county, but if you can reduce your taxes, that kind of helps the valuation.
Corey?
One of the benefits that gets touted at the state level and both in other states is the impact on property tax collection. Here in Pennsylvania, a great deal of the value of the data center presumably would be captured in that property tax assessment for that property. So there are a number of cases where school districts, especially out east, have said, oh my gosh, this revolutionized our school district because we have tons of dollars coming in from the data center that moved in, and it drastically increased our property tax collection for the school district. And on top of that, it didn't add a whole bunch of seats because there weren't a ton of people influx into that particular community. So it was very helpful for those school districts to dramatically increase the property tax valuation collected in that school district. Having said that, we're Western Pennsylvania, and so our school districts tend to be very small. So that one school district would be benefiting tremendously from greater property tax collection, but it would be really limited to that very particular school district.
I'm going to ask this to all three of you and think about this for a minute. When the Fayette County commissioners, if they meet with a data center or a power plant, what are some of the community benefits that they could ask for and should be talking about to benefit the community? Let me start with you on the end, Sean.
So first thing that should be asked is, what's the economic benefit for this to come into the area? It should be asked what kind of jobs are going to come with that. Are they out-of-state jobs? And is the housing going to be able to take the influx of construction? I don't have a problem with that because most of my guys all live in the rest of us trades. Yeah, there will be out-of-state guys come in and work, but it's going to be our locals mainly. You should see what your infrastructure, meaning like your public services, is going to need with the influx. You should see or ask what kind of how your roads can accept that kind of traffic, flow now, and can your stop signs need to turn to red lights, and you need to expand your intersection, and your first responders. So things like this, when you have kind of economic growth, in my opinion, you'll see a benefit to your educational system, you'll see a benefit to your healthcare system, and you'll see a benefit to your local economy. And I just don't see how that doesn't happen, but everybody can figure out where they want and look it up, but that's what I see, and I think they're the kind of questions that need to be asked.
Corey, what are the kind of things that you want to look for in a community benefits agreement?
So those community benefits agreements, like I said, you set out the rules of the road if the data center is coming to develop in your community. So common things, I talked about the diesel generators operating. You can say, I only want those to be tested at X, Y, and Z times throughout the week. I also require screening. So if you build, I want there to be a tree line that extends 100 feet past the property and basically hides it away from public view. And those types of agreements are not new to us in Western Pennsylvania. We do it all the time with natural gas development. So, yeah. So that's why CBA agreements should be a public process. So that's where you go to your local government, and hopefully your local government is consulting with folks like me and others to learn about what they are. But having these requirements, like I said, isn't new. We're used to doing that with Range Resources, for example, and saying, hey, this well is being developed, and I want there to be a tree line, and I want there to be fencing, and I want the road to dump out at this particular location. So those types of agreements, giving those rules of the road, they're not new or particularly innovative. We're used to doing those sorts of things all the time in Western PA.
Dan?
Well, I negotiate for a living, so my advice would be to ask for the world. These are multi-billion-dollar facilities. You figure out, each community has different needs. South Urbane Township, for example, right now, there's a lot of discussion about data centers there. And the same day, I live right by there, and they announced they're closing all their parks because they don't have money. That's damn sure something I would ask for if I was a resident of that community, school buses, fire equipment, whatever it is. I would make big asks. These are multi-billion-dollar facilities. And yet, absolutely, the public should be involved and have a say in that. And, maybe you're against data centers and it still gets approved anyway, right? You're not happy about it, but it's going to happen. Make sure you're getting something out of it. Get your taxes lower, get playgrounds, whatever the community needs. But that is your chance to really get something out of what's going to go in your community.
All right, this is going to be a loaded one that you guys are going to, there's a lot of, I'll call it misinformation. It comes in a lot of different forms on either side of the issue. Where do you think most people that really don't know and don't have a strong opinion one way or the other can really turn into and get some facts about all of these issues we're talking about: job creation, economic input, property values, noise, energy usage, electricity rates, et cetera, et cetera? Where can the average person go and try and get some of this non-biased information?
I don't think there is unbiased information on either side, really. But I would say go to events like this, hear things you don't agree with, and talk to people you do agree with. I mean, again, it's each community's decision. But as Sean said, you can go on Google or the internet and and get your information there. But I'd go to forums like this where you can ask questions. And you might not like the answers, but you should have the right to ask those questions. It should be a very transparent process. But I would say there is no single source of information where you can say this is unbiased, because conservatives, just like the news and anything, the conservatives are going to believe one source, liberals are going to believe another. So you never, I don't think there's one single source of truth. You just have to listen to a lot of opinions and come to your own conclusion. I'm not here to tell anybody what to think. I would just encourage everyone, hear both sides, and this goes for any issue, and then make your decision.
Corey?
I think just reading as much as possible, both people who do and do not agree with you. And I think one particular spin on it is to urge your elected officials to also seek out information. And we have resources out there, not only my center at W&J, but we also have resources like Local Government Academy, which is free and low-cost options to give insights to your borough and township managers, make them feel comfortable with the information that's out there. LGA also is not on the rolls of any type of data center. They're a nonprofit that focuses on good governance. So believe it or not, there are actually organizations out here in Western PA that are here just to make government work better, believe it or not. So I would urge those folks to also do due diligence to make sure they're well informed.
Sean?
So I think that's why it's important to be, when you elect your local officials, down to your school board members, to your county commissioners, down to your center township supervisors, like that's the things that need to be asked of them, and they have to be aware and be able to confront a lot of these questions. And, you know, coming from a small town, I can tell you, I know my township supervisors. They're regular guys. Yeah, they're good at plowing snow and fixing potholes, but when it comes to negotiating, you know, possibly $10 billion projects, $20 billion projects, I don't think that's the kind of people you want at the table. It's going to need a solicitor. You're going to need to get yourself prepared and ask the questions that we're talking about today and the things that will benefit your community and the benefits of it, and throw the negatives in there too. That's fine. Like I said, all I'm saying is it's coming. You have an opportunity. You have every right to do what you want to do, but Fayette County's in a unique place. It sits right here on, you know, the natural gas, and these are the things you need to start asking yourself. What does that mean for the community? What is the benefits? What's the pros and cons? And, you know, I just wanted to answer the lady's question on the NDA agreements. The NDA agreements, listen, it's frustrating to everybody, and I appreciate where you're coming from on that, and that's for the transparency of your local officials. But if they sign that, you can't hold them accountable to it. They've been told to sign that, and they have to hold the line. And that's another thing that we're just talking about right here, to ask and find out what's going on to make more people comfortable with what's coming to your town or not coming.
You mentioned this before, and I want to go a little further on this. In your experience, or maybe some of the things you've heard, what has been the additional burden that was placed on local fire departments and local EMT departments? Corey, let me ask you that one.
That one, in studying this, I haven't encountered any particular stories or research or case studies about EMT or fire in particular. I think, you know, depending on the diesel generators, making sure that they're safe and operating properly on site. If there's any type of battery backup, maybe there presents some type of safety hazard in terms of fire departments, but even that is speculation on my part.
Dan?
I don't want to speak about something I don't know about. I just can't speak to that well. I would say whatever you determine the load might be, that should be part of your ask from whoever's going to build this facility, that they subsidize it and pay for it.
And Sean, I know from your standpoint, you spend a lot of money and a lot of effort on safety for your members and how they are able to, you know, safely do their jobs. What's the impact you see on some of the work that your folks do?
So definitely safety's number one. We want everybody to go to work and come home. And I can tell you from the contractor that's building Homer City, safety's their number one priority, and they have worked with the town on the traffic flow. They worked with the state police, the local town. They've been to the fire company. They're willing to help and do whatever it takes. They've already reached out to Indiana Hospital. How can they upgrade the facilities to, influx of people that are going to be living in the area? And those are just the things that, like he said, I'm not, an expert on it. That's not me, first responder. I'm a building trades guy. Them are the questions need to get asked, and, safety is definitely a priority of the contractor and the investors that are building these.
Let me ask this one. Do any of you see us using less of these over time, where the demand for data, the demand for electricity is going to go back.
I wish. I wish that would happen, but, I come at it from a different perspective. I was a Marine for 8 years, right, so I have a national security angle on it. So, we're in a race with China, and whether it gets built here or wherever, set that aside. But it's not going to go away unless we convince China and our enemies, to give up on AI and data centers. That's not going to happen.
Corey? Well, let me ask this question, and I'll because I'm just reading the questions you guys have sent me, so I'm not making them up. I'm reading them right off the thing. Why not require data centers to install solar panels on their roofs and their land to offset the electricity needs and to meet the demands for power and job creation? Guy in the middle, Corey, the man in the middle.
No, that's something that can totally be done. Now, it also introduces other concerns like stormwater management. So a lot of solar panels, that's all impervious surface that water doesn't absorb into. So that would also need to be addressed in terms of the land use of the data center itself, because that's a lot of runoff. And any local government official in Western PA will tell you that stormwater management is the bane of their existence. It takes up a ton of their time. But certainly, having renewables to power data centers is possible. You need the requisite batteries on site to store that energy because it is intermittent. So you have to have that duo of the renewables and on-site batteries to make it happen.
Sean?
Yeah, I'm going to disagree with him, and I think there's a place for all the above energy policy with solar. I think we should be putting it on every flat building we have in school district to help out the school districts with electricity. But as far as power and AI data centers, it can't happen. Just take Homer City, for instance, 4,200 megawatts. If you were going to try to produce that kind of megawatts with solar, you'd need about 23,000 acres and probably about 15 million solar panels. That's sitting on a 3,200 acre plot of an old industrial site. You can't have that kind. And what's going to happen in 20 years when them solar panels are no good and you got thousands of acres covered with solar panels and that solar provider that's been getting subsidies is no longer there and the community's stuck cleaning that environmental waste up because that's e-waste, those solar panels, and they can't just get thrown in the garbage. It needs to be recycled properly. And I just think there's some of the questions that we need to ask, and if you were going to do it with wind, it's not possible either. You would need a little bit more on the acreage and then probably about 18,000 turbines. So let's just be realistic. This is why we need to develop our old brownfield sites that are already, basically, you're not going to build a housing development at Homer City Power Plant or Masontown or El Rama. It already's been done with legacy coal. Let's clean it up. Let's take the rare earth minerals out and produce that on the mine waste. Let's start cleaning up everything. And this is what we need to do. And it's just, you got to look at the data. The data doesn't lie.
Dan?
I live off grid and I have solar panels powering my house. I'm all for them, but they won't power a data center yet. As far as pollution and the best way to do it, like I'm a big fan of nuclear. 10 years ago, probably a lot of people weren't. I think they're coming around. But that is the future. We all hope that's the future, right? It's the least amount of pollution and it provides the most amount of power per density. So I think we're going to get there. Fortunately, we're one of the leaders in the world in nuclear power right here in Western Pennsylvania with Westinghouse, the small modular reactors. I'm really hoping that those in the next 5 years or so start to become a reality, and then you can phase out the fossil fuels.
Why can't we modernize the grid without data centers? Is there any way to do that? Does anyone have an opinion on that part of it?
Say that one more time.
The question was, why can't we modernize the grid without a data center?
Well, data centers aren't necessary to modernize the grid, for sure. So, yeah, you don't need data centers to modernize the grid or improve the grid. So, just to talk a little bit about PJM overall. PJM, we've heard so much coverage in the news lately. They were a relatively obscure organization that has come to the forefront of the news in so many ways. They're a regional transmission organization, or RTO, which is basically just a middleman that connects those who make power with those who use power. And they're merely like the auctioneer, selling off that power from those who make it and connecting it to those who need it. And with the grid modernization problem, which I think the question maybe alludes to, is that there are a lot of interconnection requests of people demanding to get onto the grid and use that electricity, and not enough suppliers of it to get on there to supply that energy. And it's not necessarily that we're not building enough power plants or we're not doing enough on the supply side. It's that we truly don't have enough poles and wires and transmission lines to effectively get all of the electricity. When you look at the folks standing in line to get onto the grid who are making power, they can't get on there fast enough. There's a bottleneck of literally connecting onto the grid of PJM, where it comes down to approvals, actual transmission lines not having enough capacity, et cetera. So it's become a big fat problem for all of us in Pennsylvania and the rest of the states that are part of PJM, where we just don't have enough capacity to move all that electricity and make that electricity that we need.
Oh, this isn't a debate. I appreciate your, no, we're not having it, we're going to hear from our panel, but right now, actually, we're going to hear from Mike Turner. Mike Turner is a vice chair and the Ashburn District Supervisor of Loudoun County, Virginia. Short video to talk a little bit about that, and then we'll come back with some of the Q&A.
Hi, I'm Mike Turner. I'm the Vice Chair of the Loudoun County, Virginia Board of Supervisors. We're a 9-person board. We are the senior county legislative authority in our county. And I'm here to talk to you today about the data centers in Loudoun County. We have more than any other county in the world. And that has been going on for 25 years. Over that 25 years, we've learned some really good lessons, and I'm here to share some of those with you today. So we do have the highest concentration in the world. We have had 16 years, and every single day for that 16 years, for the past 16 years, there has not been a single one of those days that a data center was not under construction somewhere in Loudoun County. We have 253 data centers. Virginia has about 600, Texas has about 440, and California has about 290. We have 53 million square feet built on the ground, theoretically with another 60 million in the pipeline, though I don't think most of that is going to get built. So what are the advantages? Well, these are our fiscal year 2027 projected budget dollars. We're estimating $2.9 billion in local tax funding, local tax revenue coming into the county. Of that, 1.3 billion is going to be data center revenue. About a third is real property taxes, and about 2/3 is personal property taxes, taxes on the guts inside the data center, the new computer equipment. We have the lowest real property tax rate in the DC metro area, really including Maryland, DC, and Northern Virginia. We're about 25% lower than our comparator jurisdictions, and that's because of the data center revenue. From an expense standpoint, our data centers only cost us about 4 cents for every dollar of tax revenue they bring in. Most businesses cost us about 25 cents for every dollar of tax revenue that they bring in, and houses about break even, depending on the profits that are associated with the application. For infrastructure, they don't put cars on the road and they don't put kids in our schools. Let me talk about market failure, because that's what I believe is going on nationally right now, and the national, I don't just call it hysteria around data centers. A market failure is economically, according to Investopedia, as I suspected, is when supply and demand go grossly out of balance. A normal functioning economic system is where supply and demand are roughly in balance. If they get way out of balance, what happens is there is serious harm done to one or more segments of society because of that imbalance. And that's exactly what we're experiencing right now. And this is what it looks like in a practical manifestation within communities around the country. So first, we have an exponential increase in demand for data. This occurred for basically three reasons in the summer of 2022, a pivotal year in data center history. Number one, we started to hit power constraints. Here in Loudoun County, we had a hard constraint, and the PJM, the Northeast Grid Authority responsible for generation and distribution in 13 northeastern states, told our local utility, you've underestimated your infrastructure needs for generation and transmission by a factor of 10. So that exponential increase in demand for digital information in the summer 22 led to an exponential increase in demand for power. Where did demand for data come from? Well, a couple of things. We came out of COVID. Everybody decided they liked digital stuff. The Chat GPT was launched onto the market, and AI began to manifest itself. And again, that's when we started to hit a real power crunch here in Loudoun County. So the exponential increase in demand for data led to an exponential increase in the demand for power. More overhead power lines, more plant generation. That was offset somewhat by increases in technology with the overhead transmission grid, but not enough to really offset the increase in demand for power. Because the data centers have figured out that cooling by water is more efficient and not as noisy as cooling by air fans on the roof, there is now a concomitant exponential increase in the demand for water, which a lot of communities are experiencing around the country. All of these have caused the massive demand for power has caused a lot of communities to delay or cancel outright the decommissioning of fossil fuel plants. Pennsylvania is actually opening its coal plants again to burn coal to keep up with the power demand. And of course, that is all of these together combined have led to an exponential increase in community resistance to data centers. And this is all because we're in a state of market failure where demand vastly exceeds supply. So over the course of the last 3 years, I've been studying this because I'm an elected official in Loudoun County and we have more data centers than anybody in the world. I thought I need to find out what's going on so we can make some informed decisions going forward. And what has evolved is a paper I've written, and this 15 best practices one-page paper is also part of that package. You can find those at loudoun.gov/Ashburn, LOUDOUN/Ashburn, and you can download the paper, the slide presentation, and this 15 pages, the one page of 15 best practices. And what are these 6 factors that the 15 best practices are based on? These are the 6 factors that every community considering a data center must address before they say yes to the data center. Noise, power, water, emissions, setback from the property line, and appearance. What is a data center going to look like? You have to address those before you say yes to a data center in your community. I firmly believe there's nothing inherently good or bad about data centers. It all rests on the shoulders of the local community to make proper managerial decisions based on addressing these 6 factors. So the basic rules: make sure your comprehensive plan, your land use plan, matches your zoning ordinance. In Loudoun County, we have a land use plan, then we have a zoning ordinance, which is the legal authority that backs up the vision in the land use plan. Make sure they match. Never allow by right data center. The sector is too turbulent right now. By right, I mean they buy a piece of land and they can build on it without getting permission from the local body because it's a permitted use. Don't allow that. Any new data center should have to come to the local jurisdiction for permission to build it. And never sign a non-disclosure agreement. I know these are rapidly becoming the rage around the country. I can't see any elected official signing a non-disclosure agreement. Your constituents want to know what's going on. So let's take a look at the 6 factors. The first is noise. I strongly recommend that before you say yes, that you get the data center to commit to a pre and post-construction noise study by an independent engineering firm. And that study should measure dBA noise and dBc noise. If you imagine a bell curve, dBA noise is the narrow band in the middle that we can hear. That's audible noise. That's dBA. dBc noise is noise that you can't really hear, but you can feel. Low frequency, vibration, hum, it goes through the walls and it travels much further distances. You should establish limits for dBA noise and dBc noise between pre and post construction before you allow them to build. For dBA noise, a limit we're going to use in Loudoun County, probably retroactive with our existing data centers and new data centers, is 50 decibels of A at the property line. And I suspect we will probably limit dBc to 5 decibels. Power, the second factor. Require the utility and the data center to specify in writing the maximum power the data center will use. Require them to report how much they actually used each year. and then report where the power lines are going to go and the substations are going to go in order to keep them powered. Build your data centers near existing rights of way for power lines, but no closer than 2 times the right of way in case they have to expand and add more power lines. Requires substations to be part of the application and visible so that you need to see where the substations are going to go, and don't allow them simply to be added on as an accessory use. For energy storage, use long duration energy storage. Lithium ion batteries are what's out there right now, but long duration units that are much safer and much longer storage are right around the corner. Use those. For water, require the data center and the utility to specify how much water the data center is going to use, and specify that in writing, how much they're going to use annually. Determine whether the data center is going to use fans on the roof for air cooling, a hybrid system of both fans and open loop water, or a closed loop water system. Determine whether they're going to use potable water or reclaimed water. And lastly, this is very important, determine how they're going to clean the wastewater, whether it's an open loop system or a closed loop system. Specify in writing whether it's a proffer or a community benefit agreement. Specify how they're going to clean their water after it's used. For emissions, for their backup generators, they should always be Tier 4 backup generators. If they are Tier 2 generators, they have selected catalytic reduction units attached. They should have that, but require Tier 4 generators for all new data centers. 500-foot setback from residential is the minimum I would accept. 1,000 is much preferred. And an appearance, require natural screening and berms and fenestration, which means windows, whether fake or real, on all principal facades. Those are facades facing major highways or residential neighborhoods. Limit the building height so it fits in with the surrounding area. Limit the floor area ratio. How much floor area is there compared to the size of the property? And finally, encourage microgrid design. They're going to drop in pieces for on-site power down the road. Make sure there's space in the design of the campus to allow them to do that. You follow these 15 best practices, and you can have data centers that are a real boon to your community and not a problem like we're seeing around the country.
Boy, that was good information, especially from somebody who's lived with them for many years. I mean, most of us read about them and theoretically think we may know what they're about, but somebody who's done it for a couple decades, there's some good lessons and some good things that can be asked for. As Dan, you mentioned before, when you negotiate, ask for a lot of things. I'm just going to ask couple more questions, and we're going to wrap it up. And I'll be around for people who want to talk. And I know, other folks, have their interest. By the way, I also want to let you know this town hall is being live broadcast on Fayette TV's YouTube and Facebook pages, and you can also view it shortly after the event is over. How long, data centers being so new, do any of you have a sense of the lifespan of how long a data center will be able to be used?
I would say no one probably does have an accurate idea because the technology changes so rapidly. So I think a lot of the big hyperscalers are trying to build facilities that are flexible to accommodate future technology. I think we all can hope that they reduce their footprint, energy, emission, all that with the improvement of technology. So I think whatever's being built today is very unlikely to be where you're going to see 10 years from now or even 2 years from now.
Yeah. Corey, do you have any sense of that one?
Well, I think I should have said this a lot earlier. There's a very big difference between a small data center facility that's probably already in existence all around us, co-location facilities, enterprise facilities, which basically support like an office building. Like technically, there are data centers that are very small in existing doctor's offices, municipal buildings, et cetera. What everybody's here for tonight is really talking about hyperscalers and these really, really big ones that we see, touted by Meta and all the other AI companies. So that's where, it's to be seen what those look like in the long term, because that's a huge, dense number of servers, all in a very large facility, and traditionally we haven't been building in that large a facility with that many servers all running at the same time. So I think, sadly to answer your question, when it comes to hyperscalers, it's a big fat TBD.
Sean, your crystal ball.
So I don't know about the computer part of it, but I can tell you the infrastructure part of it, the HVAC, the power will take return maintenance, and ripple effect jobs. That's what we do in the building trades. We'll be back for outages. Fitters will be back in there to do the HVAC work, the upgrades. It'll be nonstop maintenance and nonstop, outage work to come back. And like I said, them are ripple effect jobs, and that'll last for the lifetime of the facility.
All right, I'm going to ask one last question, and all three of you think about it. Just if you are a local supervisor, council member, commissioner, what are some of the things you're going to be asking for if you're sitting across the table from somebody that wants to put a data center in your community? Let me start with you, Sean.
I think we really hit on that already. You're going to ask for what it's going to bring to the community, what it's going to bring for your town, the economic growth, the jobs, what kind of jobs are coming, what are the ripple effect jobs, and, everything that has to do with safety and, what it means, to the community for this to come and to be built here, and what are the downsides of it if there is a downside that you want to address.
Corey?
I think the big question I would have is on air quality in particular. So emissions from the diesel generators can certainly be a concern. So depending on how long they run, their scheduling, if you have asthma, that could potentially exacerbate it. COPD, potentially exacerbate it. Those are certainly, when it comes to environmental issues, that would be my number one concern, is air quality issues. And with the bring your own generation, so as we talk about, well, gosh, we really don't want it to suck as much electricity off the power grid. How do we do that? We have bring your own generation, and we have an on-site power source right there connected to the data center. Depending on what that is, again, that introduces a lot of environmental concerns, whether it's powered by coal, whether it's powered by natural gas, whether it's powered by a small nuclear reactor. So the big question mark going forward is, okay, if you're not going to be on the grid, how are you going to power this thing, and what does that look like for my community? And then let's talk about it on what that really means for us. Does it mean it's going to worsen air quality in a part of Western PA that already doesn't have the greatest air quality? Is it already going to exacerbate COPD or asthma?
Dan, what do you ask for?
Yeah, again, I think it depends on the community. I always say that there are no solutions, only trade-offs. Everything has a pro and a con, and you got to figure out for your community, if the pros outweigh the cons, and every community and township's different. So I think you got to, if you're in Beaver County and you grew up next to a steel mill, you probably have a different tolerance for these kind of developments versus someone in Fayette County that, lives next to a hunting preserve. It's just going to be, I think it's going to be different by community, but I think you should insist on it being a net positive. At the end of the day, what does it take for your community to say, even if I'm against this, we got something out of it? What would that be?
One of the things I will say, I have met with Mr. Turner, the supervisor, when we were down there. And again, you heard him say, he's not for it or against it. They're not all good or all bad. He used an analogy. He didn't use it on the film, but he used it when we were there. Think about a local restaurant or local bar. It doesn't mean it's going to be good, doesn't mean it's bad. Some of them are great gathering places that we all love in certain communities. And we know that there's probably some troublesome bars that come up and do all things, but it's not painted with a broad brush. And I think that's what we had learned when we went down there, that there were some folks who provided a lot of good benefits, and there were some folks that didn't necessarily do that. I want to thank everybody for coming. First, let's give our panel a hand for really the great work that they did and for being forthright in what they had to do. I have a feeling there might be some other town halls. There might even be some folks here that want to have their own town hall and have their own panel come up there and let people go at it. But thank you all for joining us tonight. I want to thank the county commissioners and the planning departments and the economic development departments. And let's make sure whatever we do it to benefit our communities. Thank you.